White people are on track to become minority populations in just about every Western country in the next 100 years or so. That will dramatically impact the quality of life and life prospects of your children and grandchildren. I have 4 white children. If I didn't care about the future of my race, I would be a bad father. The future of your race is your children's future. I want my children and their children to have a society where they feel at home, where they feel like they belong, a society that is looking out for their best interests. But that's not what we have. In our society, my children will be legally discriminated against because of their race, even though they are descended from the people that founded this country. Our society spreads anti-white narratives in our public education system, our colleges, that are not fact-based. It's just one spin on history that gets taught. You know, we don't learn about the broader context. I remember thinking when I was in middle school, learning about slavery in World War II, that like basically people like me are being made to be the bad guy. And yeah, that has consequences. I don't want my children being guilted for being born the way they were born. I don't want legal barriers to be put up that prevent them from even voluntarily associating with other white people. We currently live in a society of forced racial integration. And at the same time, mass immigration that no one ever voted for. It's always been unpopular. People almost always want less immigration. And there is illegal immigration where anyone from anywhere can come over the southern border and settle wherever they like in our country. And they don't necessarily like white people. They don't necessarily want to assimilate to our culture. And in certain leftist circles, you know, people believe that white people don't even have a culture. And actually, white people don't exist. It's an invalid category. So your identity is simply invalid. You know, black identity is real. Hispanic identity is real. Any other ethnic identity is real, but yours is not. My children will be told that they are nothing. They are simply individuals. They have no group that they belong to. And therefore, no one has their back. If you don't have that sentiment of loyalty to your people, you're leaving your people to compete in a world where there are other groups that are working together to advance their own interests. There are lobbying groups of other ethnicities and races in our government, but none for white people. And that's probably not going to improve. Legal discrimination against whites will probably increase if things keep going the way they're going. So naturally, a lot of people are upset about this. They realize this will impact the lives of their children and grandchildren and posterity, and will very likely lead to the elimination of their race as a whole. And you know what? It's okay to care whether or not your race exists. I mean, that's insane. All life operates on that basis, you know? Like if an organism doesn't have an affinity and fondness for those that are more closely genetically related to it, it's not going to be very adaptive, you know? So it's anti-life in a profound sense, and it's only applied to white people. Again, on the basis of historical narratives that don't show the full context. People talk about what whites did to oppress other groups, but not what we did to uplift the entire world with our science and technology. Now, to be fair, our technology is also a massive existential threat. And we are living in an era characterized by the confluence of several existential level threats of our own creation. We invented nuclear weapons. Nuclear war could still destroy civilization. Artificial general intelligence could destroy life as we know it, replacing it with God knows what. Nanoscale gray goo is a theoretical possibility. Engineered bioweapons, viruses, or bacteria. Genetic engineering of our own species could lead to the transformation of humanity in unforeseen ways. The integration of human beings and tech and computers could lead to hybrid organisms that are not recognizably human and may not be an improvement on the human condition. White people have kind of opened Pandora's box, and I don't think it's a good thing for that to be unleashed into the world, and then for that same racial stock to be like ethnically cleansed from the face of the earth. If white people created the problem, probably it would be helpful if white people were enlisted to try to solve the problem. And yeah, we do need to solve those global threats. And saving the white race means saving all of humanity at the same time. And we need to think of how we can do that seriously. The people in charge seem to want a transhuman future. And I think the mistake they're making is in thinking that they can detach themselves from the organic hierarchy. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that will be basically impossible. Our theories always have flaws. And so we have to rely on evolved, anti-fragile systems. We can't foresee everything. The future is combinatorially explosive. Theoretical prediction is impossible. I think the only way we survive, if we do attain to superhuman intelligence in one form or another, will be to have a continuous ladder extending from the animal kingdom up through humanity at its various grades of intelligence and complexity to the Ubermensch, whatever that looks like. And so we need to preserve all of the races of mankind and see that as part of a fragile global biological system that we simply don't fully understand. From a conservationist perspective, we should not be recklessly replacing a race of people that has arguably existed for 40,000 years and who has been responsible for many of the great breakthroughs in technology, art, science, etc. We don't know what we're doing when we do that. No one understands the full implications. But we need solutions, and the current leadership seems hopelessly corrupt. So yeah, it's understandable people want action. They want to create mass movements for change. They want to red pill a bunch of people. Most people in dissident right circles unduly emphasize simply the racial question. And there are other issues that have to be tackled simultaneously. One of the reasons that Joe Rogan is so popular is that he will push the boundary and look into a wide variety of issues that threaten, mankind as a whole. He had Dr. Shanna Swan on to talk about declining testosterone and decreased sperm counts, declining fertility. That's a huge threat and is not really being addressed adequately. Rising autism and the ubiquity of chemical pollutants like phthalates. Recently had Robert Kennedy Jr. on, who is a full-blown anti-vaxxer, explaining in detail how certain facts about vaccine safety have been intentionally covered up for financial gain of the pharmaceutical companies. That's why people like Joe Rogan, because he'll go broad spectrum. He's a curious guy. He looks into a bunch of different things. You don't want to be such a niche issue person that you become monotonous and unappealing to the average person. Joe Rogan appeals to the average person because it's broad. We need to be broad. If you want to save the white race, you have to look to these broader threats and issues. Moreover, by staying exclusively focused on the racial question, you are surrounding yourself with feds. That's just the fact. Since the end of World War II, Western intelligence agencies have made it a high priority, probably their highest priority, to co-opt and control far-right, especially identitarian movements. You could say it started with Operation Gladio, where they established fake neo-Nazi cells throughout Europe as controlled opposition, so that anyone who still sympathized with National Socialism or fascism would be corralled into unproductive channels where they wouldn't pose a threat. Similar operations have continued to the present day. In fact, they've greatly expanded in their scope, their scale, and their sophistication. At least 10 agencies in the US have active counterintelligence forces. There are thousands of counter-intel agents, actual feds, spies, online, being paid full-time to co-opt and control far-right movements. Many of the people you've interacted with have been feds. It would be naive not to believe that. There is no reason not to believe that. If you understand the facts of the matter, the actual structure of your political opposition, you should believe that this is the case, and we should plan accordingly. We cannot plan on organic mass red pilling and unspoken, zeitgeist energy rising up, leading to some kind of organic revolution. If there's a revolution against the government, many of the factions that would make up a coalition attempting such a thing would be Fed-controlled. And probably the most prominent, highest profile ones would be Fed-controlled. Because they control big tech. They decide how the algorithm works. They can elevate someone and have them hyper visible, or they can suppress someone and keep their numbers down despite, all efforts of this individual. So traditional online activism has serious difficulties. Traditional mass politics has serious difficulties. Luckily, there is another way that I've advocated for over the last 10 years. That is creating parallel structures. Don't try to overthrow the government. Don't try to get a new government elected. Realize instead that we have new technologies that will allow us to build new economic paradigms that will simply outcompete the old paradigms. We can build a better society, leave the old one be. It is relatively hands-off in some parts of the United States. So get to one of those places, get out of New York, California, etc. Go where it's free still, and cheap preferably, and build better systems. there's no reason why we can't do that. If you look at the evolution of our species at an anthropological scale, the way it tends to work is a group discovers a new technology, and that opens up new caloric resources that only they can exploit. They leverage that to expand their population, and then they expand. That's what happened with pottery when the Chinese ostensibly discovered clay pots. They were able to cook up stews and soups that rendered a lot of plant matter edible that was previously inedible. They had access to new caloric intake. They expanded their population as a consequence, and they fared pretty well. Although that was the old, I guess, Austronesian pre-Mongoloid stock, but still ancestors of present-day Chinese people. The domestication of the horse did the same thing for steppe nomads. It allowed them to graze further into the steppe during the winter because horses could break through the ice, and the earlier domesticates, sheep and goats, could not. And they were eating the horse meat, so again, new calorie sources. Agriculture requires no explanation, that's self-evident. But it's not just like access to food. In the modern day, it is access to intelligence and solving problems and making our cost of living as low as possible and our incomes as high as possible. There are new financial technologies to explore to get around the corrupt central banking paradigm, the fiat currency paradigm. And there are many ways of doing this. We should be experimenting with intentional communities. The best way to do it, and I have thought about this for a long time, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to network several intentional communities together with an education system that is shared in common. This education system allows you to consult experts on all of the problems that these individual communities face. It allows you to consolidate knowledge, build a coherent worldview that you all share. And that's a factor that cannot be ignored. Unless you have worldview level coherence, you don't have a civilization. Civilizations are built on a single coherent worldview. And to compete, you're going to need a civilization. I mean, that's what building these parallel structures and scaling them amounts to, starting a new civilization. I think it's a worthwhile goal and can be accomplished. So I've talked about the Peer Academy model before. I will make an updated version explaining how it works in detail, but it's not a finalized thing, and there are new technologies to consider in that vein. And people are experimenting with this stuff. Decentralized, autonomous organizations, DAOs in the crypto space. The networked state is a concept that people are talking about. It is what's on the horizon, and only a handful of high IQ subcultures are looking at this stuff. But what we have, we who care about the fate of our race, what we have is an organic source of solidarity and an incentive to altruism and all the things that we understand racially homogenous societies have going for them. That's not to say that this model, an education system uniting many different communities, shouldn't be scaled such that other groups are allowed to benefit from it. We have to solve the world's problems if we're going to solve our problems. And a lot of people can't accept that, but there are shared global existential threats. And plus, more white people will sympathize with you if you're telling them you're out to save the world, not just people who look like you. So you'll save more white people. You'll red pill more white people by being globally minded. So the way to get this started is to spread that message and make it more coherent. I've been working with Asha Logos, with his community projects, check out my Twitter account. I'll leave the link in the description to catch our Sunday spaces where we discuss many of these issues. We've had 4 sessions so far. They've gone pretty well. And Asha will probably make a new video sometime soon outlining some of what we've talked about. And that model for what these parallel communities look like is becoming clearer. We don't have to be impotent. We don't have to wait until society at large changes. We can simply build the new society. So take heart, have courage, and just get up and start doing something. It can also be profitable. You don't have to sacrifice. You don't just have to donate to your favorite streamer. You should do that. You should incentivize online content production. Because if you're stingy and you'd rather spend the money on your personal entertainment and not give it to the handful of good faith actors, the handful of guys that are out there in this space making all of the ideological headway, pushing the boundaries, being the thought leaders, they're not sufficiently rewarded for what they do. You should actually reward those people. But it doesn't just have to be that. We can also invest in businesses together, intelligently structured. I think the best way to move forward is to create initially just one content creation hub. All we need is a handful of guys, 6 to 10 guys, who are willing to work full-time in full spectrum media warfare. That's what it'll take. And I think it's a strategy that hasn't been sufficiently exploited. Many content creators don't have various platforms active, even though it would be free to create them. That's free views that are just untapped because people are typically too lazy to create these accounts. I'm too lazy to create these accounts. I also have a lot of other stuff going on, so I doubt whether I would post to all these various platforms. But, it's just tedious work. It's simple work. You don't have to be an expert in online content creation or advertising or anything like that to make this content creation hub work. You need 6 guys renting a large apartment or a house, organized, scheduled on a day-to-day basis, creating these accounts, creating the Subscribestar and other revenue collection platforms, doing networking, booking guests for podcasts, doing that kind of work. They should also create content themselves, because there's a lot of content that we could be creating that's basically algorithmic in nature, like a decent audio-visual news aggregator. That simply doesn't exist. At least I don't know where it exists, if it does. But it would be so simple just to scour all of the news sites that you can find online, pick the stories that appeal to your target demographic, and compile them together in a way that's flashy, that keeps attention, and have one charismatic personality be the anchor and tell the news like it used to be done. Fight back against these anti-Western civilization narratives. Biographies of the great men and women of our culture. A lot of that stuff is just unknown. People don't know the great inventors. They don't know the great mathematicians and physicists, except for a handful of people. That story, the story of our accomplishment, could be told in much greater fidelity in a way that's more accessible than people are doing it now. There's educational content, homeschooling content that could be made. People are already doing that, but I think organized in a house like this, we can develop a set of brands that work well together, that are networked together well. There are network effects when you have large audience bases on one platform interacting with another platform that, accelerates how fast the whole thing grows. And you can even offer services to existing content creators to create, thumbnails for them, to search engine optimize for them, to book guests for them, to create these alternative platforms like a Rumble account or a TikTok or whatever, and manage them and know the terms of service very well so that you minimize necessary self-censorship and minimize also the chance of being banned. So I think this is a no-brainer at a certain level. Like, I think it would be a successful business potentially. So if you're willing to give that a shot, you're a young guy and you don't have a family yet and you don't have already a high-paying job, why not move down to my area where you can find rentals still under 600? Not many places can boast that. So come down to my area, we'll vet the right guys to do this, and we'll get a team together, and we'll start this business. There's nothing preventing us from doing that. A lot of why things don't move forward is that people are socially isolated, and we have parasocial bonds online that satisfy our, social instincts somewhat, but we need to move beyond that. The feds are organized in real-life think tanks. We need our own think tanks. We need our own schools, our own institutions. And the media house is a natural place to start because that accelerates everything else. That allows you to generate a funnel, tapping into many different audiences and pulling in the people who sympathize with this goal of creating parallel communities. You don't have to bill yourself universally as like something generally unpalatable, like a white nationalist or something like that. You can care about your race and save your race and do nothing illegal and benefit a lot of people economically. When enough people are involved, there are ways of developing communities, intentional communities, that would allow for lower cost of living, lower price housing. Like, I have run the numbers, and I really believe that we can get people housing for like decent housing, not huge, but decent housing in a community for less than $15,000. It can be done with local materials if it's done correctly. It's just not done by profit-seeking entities as it stands because, they have their traditional construction methods. And typically it's like people who have a bunch of resources that are engaged in real estate development, and they're not looking to, expand affordability for low-income people. And then there's like government programs for low-income housing that incentivize certain types of construction and standards. And I just think like people are closed-minded basically, and we need to exploit new technologies and primitive methods in the right combination to move forward and become more competitive. And there's really no other option. Like, even if you red pill the masses on the question of the significance of preserving white people, everyone agrees on that. Still, there are going to be people that move forward in these new community designs, and those communities are going to be more successful. We can do it better, though, because ours can be founded on organic solidarity and like a coherent metaphysics. And I've worked on that. We have Platonism. We have the combination of modern physics and classical metaphysics that we've kind of discovered gradually over the years, that I've helped in discovering and, sharing with you guys over the last 10 years. And I think we're on the cusp of being able to do something really great. And you have to have that optimism and look forward to a future that isn't just like mere survival, that isn't just escaping modernity. You don't have to build the new post-modern world or post-postmodern world. And I would ask that you trust me or trust Asha Logos or trust someone who is putting forward a vision like this. I have my 13 acres. Right now, people could come down and rent to own a portable building that is a decent-sized living space for less than $300 a month. You could do that right now. If there were 10 guys who wanted to do that and start the Peer Academy school like I've talked about, the basic Platonic Academy, or who just wanted to run local businesses. I would probably quit my job and go all in on that right now. I'm ready to go. And people need that enthusiasm and sense of urgency and optimism. Like, yeah, it won't necessarily work out, but are you going to sit on your hands and just like watch as your race is destroyed, as your prospects economically as a class are destroyed, like as the transhuman agenda is just pushed forward and the world becomes less and less recognizable and you lose your humanity? Like, you don't have to. There's nothing compelling you to. Like, stand up, have some confidence in yourself and your ability to do something in this world. And yeah, join me or join someone, you know? It doesn't have to be me. I'm not really set on me being a leader of anything, but it doesn't seem like anyone else is standing up willing to do it. You know, Nick Fuentes doesn't want to lead people in real life. His strategy is that by inspiring people with his message, some of his followers will enter into politics. Okay, if that's the goal, create a training institution to get those people fast-tracked to succeed in college, to succeed in their early professional career. Be scientific about it. You know, cover all your bases and don't just have conferences once a year and then like do a streaming show where you grift. That's not enough. The message is necessary, you know, but not sufficient. There should be schools. We have crap schools and we could build better ones ourselves. And we should. It's not that complicated, guys. It's like the younger generation is going to need to be educated. We have crappy schools. What should we do? What should we do? We should build schools. I know how. And other people who, you know, are interested in the same thing have ideas and have know-how to share. And we can share our knowledge intelligently with this peer academy system that I've talked about in the past. So nothing, literally nothing is holding us back from just getting started and developing. If there's 10 guys who want to start local businesses, I'll buy the equipment. I don't even care. A trash hauling business, all you need, I have a truck. You can use my truck. And I'll buy a dump trailer. You know, lawn care. Buy one of those fancy, like riding mowers, 0 Point, I think it is, where you stand up on it too. Like buy the equipment for that kind of stuff. Leaf blowers, weed whackers, etc. There are forest products here on my land that people could, harvest. Firewood. You could simply chop firewood all day and still have more than enough left over. Like all day, every day, chopping firewood on the land that I have here and selling that firewood. And maybe it wouldn't be a great, per hour income, but it's something. There is money to be made just by getting away from the mainstream system and doing something on your own. There's clay here that makes good bricks. I could buy a brick press and people could simply make bricks and we could build more infrastructure here and build out the school. Like stuff can happen, guys, but not if you stay in just what's comfortable and like, oh, I don't want to move away from my family. But like, okay, do you have your own family? Do you have kids yet? Do you have a high income job? If it's no to both of those things, you need to take some radical steps to make the world a better place for the kids that you will one day have. And the dating market is rough, and you need to set yourself apart and have drive and have a mission in life. And that's what women are attracted to. It's men who know what is right and know what is necessary and have the conviction to do it. You shouldn't waffle back and forth. I've seen so many times when talk of parallel communities becomes popular, people are all gung-ho about talking about it. But when it comes to the number of people actually willing to move down, it's usually very small. And it just requires courage. You can't replace those real-life institutions with just more online activity. We can do both. Even though the internet is a great resource, we should be doing more in real life 10 people, show up here, get your portable buildings. We'll build sheds as time and labor allows. There's a lot of usable timber here. I can get a lumber mill. We can get boards cut. We can build housing and have a very low-cost lifestyle here already. Or we can pool resources if more people are interested and buy a larger plot of land, on a river. There are so many great places and great opportunities in this country. We are truly blessed to live where we live with the freedoms we still enjoy. Things are getting worse fast. So take the opportunities that do exist now and do something with them. Again, if not with me, then with something else, somebody else. Create something yourself and put yourself out there. There's just not enough courage in these circles. History doesn't remember cowards. And you deserve better, and you should have self-respect, because if you're watching this, you're not dumb. You care about things that matter, and you have potential. And I want to help. So the Content House, come down and rent a very low rent situation, sharing with other guys who are going to be working full time, just spreading positive messages online. And yes, you can make money doing that, and we will find ways of making money. And there are many intelligent people already involved in the broader project, the Communities Project, Return to the Land movement, I guess is what we're branding it. Ashlogos still has his audience to kind of come back to with more developments, and a wave of new people will come into this. And it's time we move forward, and I am willing to help as far as I possibly can. I've been out there for 10 years advocating stuff like this, and I've tried several times unsuccessfully, and a couple people have joined me, and I didn't have everything fully put together, and my life wasn't put together. But as I said, I have children now. I care about their future, and I know that just like making money and participating in the economic system as it is not going to really care for their future, because all of the problems that I mentioned, like the global threats, as well as the threats to our identity, and that means my children's identity, and I care about them, I love them, and I'm going to do what I can to preserve a future for them, and you should do the same. So, and by the way, if you don't believe in me and you won't follow me, what exactly are you, who are you waiting for? Am I not good enough for you? Who is? Who exactly would you be willing to follow? Because a movement of anarchists who aren't willing to follow anybody ever gets nothing done. You need leadership. The dissident right would be in a much better position if they arbitrarily just picked one random person and made them king. And then that person, recognizing their fallibility, might say, well, I respect these experts. I'll get my team of experts around me, and we'll come up with a plan. And, if everyone gave all of their money to just one guy, that one guy could make a kingdom, a literal kingdom, buy 1,000, 2,000 or more acres. There are tens of thousands of people in these circles, consolidate all those resources. What could be created? Just think about it. If people were willing to follow, that's all it takes, that humility, So if you're not willing to follow me, who are you willing to follow? What will it take? Because it's got to be somebody. And as I said, I don't even care if it's me. Somebody has to act, though. So I'm willing to. Fine, I'll do it. Just trust me, because I have been out there longer than most other people in these spaces. I've been public with my plans. I've not changed in my plans. I've always intended to build a school. I've always intended to build communities from day one on YouTube. I've cared about, identity from day one. I've not always talked about it because, I'm prudent and I still have a YouTube channel, and even this video I consider a little bit risky given how explicit it is. But I'm not saying anything immoral here. And any regulator at a tech company could see that. And yes, like the feds could shut me down or whatever. That's why there is urgency to build real life platforms. And the media house will be, I think, a big benefit to a lot of people if it is actually realized. So if you want to do either of those things, move onto my land and do real work or the school, or move into an apartment, a shared apartment, and work on media, contact me. There's nothing preventing us from doing that. Just contact me directly. Okay, my Telegram, I don't know if I just want to send that out. I'll put a Telegram group. How about that? An open Telegram group in the description. And if you're not interested in joining one of those projects, don't join it. People have to act. You have to have courage. So that's why I'm making this video, to encourage you to act. And hopefully my logic makes sense here. I believe it does. And, we just have to kind of confront ourselves and ask, why are we in this position? And what can we learn to pull ourselves out of it? What can we learn about ourselves, our own capacities? You have way more potential than you understand. All of us do. And that's it. Thank you for listening. God bless.